Welcome to Cross Border Interviews, the show where we dive into the insights of municipal political leaders from across Canada. Now, our mission on this show is quite simple: shine a light on the dedicated individuals who day in and day out work around the council table to shape the communities that we call home. And for today's episode, we are honored to be sitting down and chatting with Strathcona County Councillor Robert Parks. Strathcona County is located in the heart of Alberta and is an energetic and thriving community, a leader in North America's petroleum industry and a champion for advancing diverse agricultural businesses, and who uses that energy to power the new tomorrow. Strathcona County is a specialized municipality and works cooperatively with both urban and rural residents to govern as a single entity. Strathcona County is a welcoming place to live and attracts people of all ages, cultures, and walks of life to join them in the heart of Alberta. From the smallest village to the largest city, across every region of the province, Alberta Municipalities represents the communities where over 85% of Albertans live. AB Munis provides a united voice for 265 of Alberta's 330 municipalities, including summer villages, towns, cities, and specialized municipalities. As Alberta's largest municipal group, AB Munis listens to municipal leaders and advocates for solutions to their common issues. Additionally, AB Munis supports local governments by providing services specially designed to meet their operational needs. And they bring their members together regularly so they can share ideas and information so that their communities can thrive. Check out Alberta Municipalities at abmunis.ca and follow them on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, now called X. Robert, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about yourself and talking about the great Strathcona County. But before we talk about the county, I want to get to know the man behind the persona a little bit. Got to start with a very simplistic question, but it's an overarching one. Where does your duty to serve come from? Your sense of duty to serve come from, Robert?
Good question. For me, duty is a great way of labeling what you do on council. For me, I've always believed that community service starts with listening, learning, and showing up. That sense of duty comes from two places: probably my parents, who helped me make me into who I am today, and my lived experience here in Sherwood Park in Strathcona County. I was taught to understand that if you care about a place, you invest in it. And that doesn't just mean your money, it means your time, your skills, and your voice when possible. Over the years, I've volunteered locally with local groups like the County Clothesline, United Way, and things like that. But I've also worked with businesses, and I was just part of our community. I saw firsthand how much a stronger community becomes when people step forward and help solve the problems instead of waiting for someone else to just do it for them. I've often said that I don't need to be a genius. I just need to be smarter than the problem. And sometimes when we're dealing with our council issues that we're dealing with, we don't have to be geniuses. We just have to be smarter than the problem we're trying to fix. So when I first ran in 2017, it wasn't because I thought I had all the answers or anything like that. It was that I thought I had some good ideas. It was that I also believed that I had a good work ethic, that I had curiosity, and that I had some life experiences, but I also thought that they would translate well into serving my residents. The biggest skill that I thought I had was the willingness to listen and learn and to be proven wrong. So yeah, that was my sense of duty on it.
It opens up a few questions I need to ask just to make sure, because you're one of the very few politicians that I've had on this show. And I know municipal politicians hate being called politicians, but guess what? You're politicians. You're elected. You're a politician. You might disagree with that. Most people aren't, but you are. So you're one of the few that have come on the show and said you're willing to admit when you're wrong. Is that hard in the municipal sense? Because provincially and federally, you can get away with that. You can say, oh, we didn't know it was the opposition's fault that we got here, or it was the other levels of government. At the municipal level, you are the closest to the people. And if you admit you're wrong, people will talk to you the day after you admit you're wrong, and they will tell you why you were wrong and how bad you were wrong.
Well, thankfully, I have a mom and I had a sister who was regularly tell me wrong, and I've got a wife now who's more than happy to tell me when I'm wrong. So I've got a thick skin though as well. So I mean, it's one of those ones where I mean, if it's for me, if I've looked at something and I see that I'm on the wrong track, I'm okay with saying that I'm wrong on it. Are there a lot like that? Not as many as I'd like. I think there are some people that are stubborn that'll, climb up on that hill and will say that's the hill I'm going to die on. And sometimes you end up leaving them up there to die sometimes because they're wrong. Um, I've rarely found that I have to find an issue that I'm not willing to, look at and to be proven wrong on things. I remain skeptical, is the way I always like to say is. When we're doing a public hearing, I jokingly say I may have I will always remain open-minded, but I will be skeptical on things because there are sometimes I'm going, that doesn't pass a smell test. But if they can prove to me that I'm wrong on it there, I'm willing to change my vote. And I've literally brought motions forward to council and I've voted against my own motion before because I was proven that I was wrong on it there, that there was something there was a reason why we were doing something that I could see from after having a discussion. So for me, it's practicality more than anything. I mean, I'll be practical on it there. If I'm wrong on it, I'm wrong on it, and I'm willing to admit it there. Yeah, I hear about it sometimes that, you were wrong on something. I'm going, would you rather me just to keep fighting against what's right? Or would you rather me, say, nope, you're right. I'm on the wrong track here. Let's change directions.
So how do you get to that point though? Because you're at the end of the day, you have to raise your hand and vote yes or no on any given issue that is presented in front of you, and you're given the facts up to the point where you have to make that decision.
Mhm.
We all have our own moral compasses that we live by. We believe what is right and what is wrong. But as a counselor, you're sort of in this gray area because you have to listen to the people of what they want and what they don't want at the end of the day as well. But have that core moral compass in you that says this is what's right and this is what's wrong. Who wins before that vote is decided that first time? Is it always Robert or is it always the resident? Because I can imagine that's probably a tricky thing you had to learn and probably still are learning today because things always change, right? And I can imagine if I go talk to 100 people in Strathcona County in Sherwood Park today, they're going to give me 100 different reasons why this is the right answer or this is the wrong answer.
Oh, certainly. I mean, I'm sure if we ask somebody what color the sky was, they're going to disagree sometimes as well.
It's
Um,
aquamarine, don't you know?
Well, today it's a slight gray because it's very cloudy and rainy, but at the same time there, for me, I want to say, first of all, I've never lost sleep over a vote I've taken. And I say that because I've gone in there and made the best decision that I felt that I could make at that any time. Now I've woken up, 3 days later and going, am I sure on that? And it's one of those ones where the longer I do this, I think the less sure I am of anything. But at the same time, there, I own every vote I make. I'm more than happy to own every vote I make. If somebody confronts me with it there, I will explain why I voted for something. And yeah, you're right. There are sometimes that I will vote for things that I don't particularly like because the alternative may be worse. And it's one of those ones where sometimes you're making the best bad decision you can make because the alternative is even worse. And so at that point, you're making the best decision you can with the information you're going with. And I'm fine with making that decision as it's time to. And then if there's time to make another decision that's going to go against that because better information's come in, well, then you've got to be prepared to make that decision as well. It's one of those ones where I mean, I know it's tough to say that. I mean, you're going to have people disagree with you. Well, of course you are. I've got a thick skin, and I get told that I'm wrong all the time. At the
And
same
that's
time,
not that's just that your wife, right?
and that's just when I go upstairs and we start talking about what we're going to have for breakfast tomorrow. I mean, we're going to have any type of discussion where I'm going to get told I'm wrong. At some point, I have to know inside whether I am or not, and I have to do that study inside of myself, and I have to do this, the reflection on go, okay, am I right or am I wrong on this? Most of the time, I won't say that I'm always changing my mind because I'm not. There's a lot of the time that I'm pretty sure I'm on the right track on something there. And yeah, I'll have residents that'll reach out to me and say that I'm on the wrong track on it sometimes. And I'll look at it and I'll review. And if I am, I'll then talk to them more on it there and I'll do more studying and more studying. And if I turn out that I'm wrong, I'll change my mind. But a lot of the time, I'm pretty well on the right track. And that's just because I've done the studying, I've done the research on it there. I've gone deep inside myself on some decisions and gone, nope, this is where I'm at on this. And it's going to be tough to move me on it. But there are times as well where I'm going to be moved when it's the right decision to make.
You said that you don't lose sleep over the votes that you make, but I can imagine the votes that you make are very tough, especially when it comes to budgetary issues.
Certainly.
You and I will both agree, and if we don't, then that's another conversation we can have. But that times are tough right now. People are struggling, and people are struggling day to day. municipalities play a role in that struggle a little bit. When you raise property taxes, that means people might have to stop going to the grocery store every week instead of now it's every 2 weeks, or instead of every month, it's every other month. How hard are those budget votes? Because we're heading into a municipal election. There might be municipal candidates who are listening and say, oh, once we get elected, the first budget's going to be easy because we don't have to think about it. It's already been done and we just have to basically sign off on it. But that budget is going to be very tough for a lot of people because you potentially see increase in cost because infrastructure is aging right now. And I'm sorry, but you only have one source of revenue, and that is property taxes. So
Mhm.
unless you're going to say we're going to let our infrastructure age out and to get destroyed by itself, it's going to be hard. So how hard are the votes, even though you're not losing sleep over them?
Hard votes are going to be part of the game that we're going with here. For myself, budget votes are always difficult. I think in the 8 budgets that I've now passed over the last 8 years, I think I voted for 5 of them. So it's one of those ones where if I can't rectify in my mind that we're making the right decision for the right time and we're, the increases are going to be reasonable, I can't vote for it. And that means that sometimes I'm going to say yes to things that I don't like, but it also means I'm going to say no to things I like. Um, every project you come to us is a great project. There's rarely that we're getting told a bad idea by somebody that we're going to be wanting to do for a new program. But sometimes it's not the right time. Sometimes it's just we don't have the funds for it. So I'm going to vote against things that sometimes I'm going to say I'd love to be able to do that, but I also need to be able to pay for it as well. And when we're looking at it, that whole there's only one taxpayer, there is only one taxpayer. Whether we're getting our grant funds from the province or we're getting, transfers from the feds, those are still tax dollars at the end of the day. They're still coming from my residents. Sure, there may be that residents pool is now split out between 40 million people of all of Canada. We're still getting some of that from that taxpayer dollar that came from my local taxpayer. It's all local taxpayer dollars that are being spent for things. So at that point, I have to then balance, is it, a true priority or not? And that's where I then try and lean onto that priority-based budgeting and trying to be as efficient as possible. Because you're right, there are decisions that we're going to make at council table and at budget time that are tough, that we're going to end up having to say no to things that are great ideas because it's not the right time. We just don't have the funds for it. I'll use an example. We have something called the Missing Link Sidewalk Program where we've got sidewalks in Sherwood Park where we want to put them to where they don't exist right now. And at some point, I have to say, sometimes we're building sidewalks to nowhere. We're building a sidewalk to, two places where people aren't generally walking right now. Is it great to be able to do that? Certainly. Should it be a priority over making sure we have X, Y, or Z for our residents to make sure we have good snow removal and our roads in good shape? Maybe not. So at that point, we've got to build our priority list on there and go, okay, is this a priority? Is it truly a priority or not? And sometimes the answer is no. And when it's no, we have to then say, great idea, but we can't do it right now. And we're going to have to put that on the side burner, on the back burner until it's time to be able to actually move forward with things. Doesn't mean it's ever going to be no. It just might mean that sometimes we have to do not now. And when you're doing about the tough things about tax dollars right now, yeah, it's awful for people when, they haven't seen a raise for 5, 6 years. And they're seeing their property taxes go up 5, 7% every year. And some of our municipalities in our region have seen them have to go even higher. That's a tough sell to people. And then if you're not looking at trying to find savings, are you really doing your job or are you just basically rubber stamping some of the decisions you made during the year? So for myself, yeah, sometimes I'm having to look back and go, it's too much. We have to find savings somewhere. Maybe we can't do that project this year. Maybe we do have to push it a year. Maybe we do have to push it until it's not a priority anymore. Or if it is a priority, we have to then say, okay, this is a priority. We're going to do it now, but we're only going to do this much of it today. And we're only going to do this much. We're going to do it over a longer period of time. And sometimes we have to say no to things that I think would be great, nice to haves. And you got to have that difference between nice to have and need to have. And if you don't know the difference, you're going to have a tough time in this gig sometimes because you've got to sometimes make tough decisions.
Strathcona County is one of the three, if I'm not mistaken, specialized municipalities in the province of Alberta.
We got a few
You
more hiding around, but we're one of the big three. So
one of the big three, and I think the three that I'm talking about are you, Woodland, Wood Buffalo, Fort McMurray, and Crow's Nest Pass are the three that come to
yeah.
top of mind
The
right
other one
now.
would be like Jasper's, considered a specialized municipality. But again, it's a different type of specialized municipality because they aren't so much industry, they're more tourism. And it's
Yeah.
got the national park and all the fun stuff in there. But yeah, you're right.
But you have a very big urban rural split in Strathcona County. You have
We
Sherwood
certainly
Park
do.
and literally everything else outside of Strathcona
That's
County.
right. And a lot of our tax base is not in Sherwood Park.
Yeah.
We've got 104,000 people allegedly in Strathcona County. About 80,000 of them live in and around Sherwood Park. However, a huge amount of our tax base comes from the industrial heartland, where we've got the refineries and we've got that level of industry that are bringing huge amounts of tax dollars for us to be able to pay for things in Sherwood Park. So you're right. There is that urban rural split, but there's also an industrial component to it where the taxpayers are coming from. It's tough sometimes, but at the same time, I have to put on my hat and say, well, I represent Ward 1 of Strathcona County in Sherwood Park. I have to represent the folks in Ardrossan as well. I have to think about, put myself in that third box thinking sometimes where it's not just for me, it's not just for my neighbor, it's for my neighbor's nephew who lives, halfway to Uncas. So, I mean, we've got all these people that are not necessarily in my ward, and that's a challenge always when you've got the closed ward system that you've got to think outside of your boundaries. Sometimes it's easier, I know, like in St. Albert where they have open wards and you've got the full community. We aren't like that. I get elected by the folks in Ward 1, but it means at the same time I still have to talk to issues and I still have to be knowledgeable about issues that are outside of my ward. And you sometimes have to make decisions that I'll use the sidewalks program again because it's an easy one. A lot of those missing sidewalks end up being built in Ward 1. Sometimes I have to say we don't need them right now because we need to be able to make sure we're building that trail to Ardrossan.
Do you
And
think
so,
the residents of Sherwood Park and at an extent of Strathcona County understand that dilemma, right? Because you understand it because you've lived it for the last 8 years. But, and this is the big but, the people of Sherwood Park, they want to make sure that when they're paying their property taxes, money's coming back to them. They're seeing that actual, like concrete action going on their neighborhood. And that's the biggest challenge that I think municipalities are facing right now is we are so spread thinly that we can't always see. Like when I paid my property taxes this year, I know I'm not going to see any big changes that are in front of my house that I can say this is a tangible action item that I paid my taxes for. But I understand that that road down 4 blocks from here that needs to be repaved, I'm probably going to drive that one day, and that means my tax dollars are going to be great. Do you get a sense that in Strathcona County and Sherwood Park, there is that sense that we're in this together and it's not Sherwood Park versus the rest of the community of Strathcona County?
yes and no. Do I think
Okay.
people get it? No. I mean, the reality is your residents, for the most part, first of all, I don't get calls from residents when they're happy. I get calls generally when they're unhappy with things.
What? What?
I know,
Breaking news
stop.
here.
Shocking.
Breaking.
That being said, do I think your residents necessarily see all the minutia of it? No, and I don't think they necessarily should. I know I didn't think about it so much before I was elected. There was things that you learn after you get into the job. So I mean, at the same time, do I think my residents totally get it? No, but I'm not expecting them to. What I am expecting them to understand, though, is that we are a larger community. So that there are things that are going to be built that aren't necessarily just for you. So we use the rec centers there versus Festival Place, our arts center. You've got recreation for sports, you've got recreation for arts, you've got libraries, you've got all these things. You're right, not everybody's going to use everything that we've got, but there's something that you're going to use there. So when you're paying your property taxes, you're paying for a suite of products there that we're offering: roads, garbage, water, wastewater. We're offering recreation, we're offering, sidewalks, we're offering trails. We're offering all these things that are you going to use all of them? No. And I wouldn't expect everybody to use everything unless you're have too much time in your hands. But you are going to use some of the things you use there. And I'm hoping you're getting value for those things. So when you're spending your property taxes, which are still the most antiquated way of paying for municipality ever, but it's what we've got, we're hoping we're giving value for the dollar that you're putting out there. So if you're spending your $3,000 in property taxes on your house, then you're able to get good roads. You're able to get good services. Your garbage is getting picked up. Your water shows up when it's supposed to. The wastewater goes down when it's supposed to, which is also a critical one there. But that you're also getting the good soccer fields, that the grass is mowed properly there, that you're not getting infested by, ground squirrels because we, decided to build a road on top of a ground squirrel colony and they moved into your backyard. There's a joke about that one day that I'll have to tell, but
Maybe
my
love
ward backs off to the Anthony Henday Drive, and there are a huge amount of ground squirrels in that transportation utility corridor. When they opened up the highway to everybody, Where did the squirrels go? They moved into the neighborhoods. We had some interesting ground squirrel discussions in Woodbridge Farms, Village on the Lake, Westboro. For the first few hundred yards in there, where all of a sudden we got infested by ground squirrels when they moved it there. So we were gopher land for a couple of years there, where we had to deal with that for folks.
I shouldn't be laughing, but it's kind of funny, but it's not at the
And
same
yet at the
time.
same time, that is so municipal government sort of, in a capsule there. The provincial government made this great decision to build this highway. We need the highway. But do we ever consider that all of a sudden we're going to end up having, all the yards that are, a couple hundred yards away getting infested by gophers? No. But who's going to deal with the gophers? It's going to be the municipality that has to deal with the gophers there to help with the residents, because at some point somebody's going to have to deal with it, and the residents can't do all of it all their own, especially when it starts digging into the roads.
You bring up two important questions I need to ask, and I want to ask the one that you just mentioned there. Municipalities are in a sort of a bind right now. If the provincial government or the federal government doesn't do something, then it falls onto the municipality to sort of take it upon themselves to fix that issue. Homelessness, ground squirrels, because you just mentioned it, is a big issue, and the province has been talking about strychnine, liquid strychnine, and that is their prerogative to get it back on the shelf so that way people can
Yeah.
kill these ground squirrels. How often are you fielding questions about federal and provincial issues? Because you know the role that the municipality can play. I say can play because you have your jurisdictional role, but your resident, because you are the closest to them, they probably know you more than they know their MLA or their MP because they're off in Ottawa. And I say off in Edmonton, but literally it's a hop, skip, and jump from where you are. How often are you dealing with provincial and federal issues that you would just want to say, go talk to your MLA, go talk to your MP. It's not our issue. But at the end of the day,
Oh,
you can't say that.
there are numerous times I would love to be able to say that, but the reality is you don't. It happens fairly often. I mean, especially when you're dealing with provincial issues with healthcare and education and those. I mean, we've got a hospital that's three-quarters, of a hospital in Strathcona County that doesn't allow long-term care beds and is missing things. I hear all the time on it there. And my biggest role is going to be advocacy. It's one of the reasons why I've gotten so heavily involved with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, with, the different committees and everything that way. And for me, it's just because I need to have that voice, that outlet to be able to get directly to the folks that are making the decisions on maybe those, to say, this is what I'm hearing. Especially here in Sherwood Park, when we've got an opposition MLA and not a government side MLA, he gets shut out sometimes from having those discussions because we're one of those rare ones outside of Edmonton and Calgary that don't have straight UCP MLAs. We've got an NDP MLA in Sherwood Park who also happens to be the critic for municipal relations, and Kyle, who's excellent on being able to advocate for us and talk to those different issues, but he doesn't get to the table as often as he'd probably like to be able to make those decisions because he's in opposition. Well, my past gives me that ability to get some meetings that he probably has a tough time getting. So I'm able to have good relations with our local-ish UCP MLAs and some of the government MLAs, just because of my past with some involvement with provincial affairs. But at the same time, it's a lot of its advocacy. It's stepping out of where I have a decision-making power and being my residents' advocate. It's talking about, we need to get that second phase of the hospital done. The Henday, where maybe we do need to get that third lane done. Is liquid strychnine maybe the best option, or is there something else that's better that isn't going to end up, killing the dogs and the cats in the neighborhood, as well as creating, weird flipper animals there that weren't supposed to? I mean, you'd hate to have another thalidomide just because you've ended up having, it works on one thing, but it causes problems in three other areas that we haven't even considered. So it's one of those ones where I always want to make sure that we're not having unintended consequences, but still having that good advocacy on it there to have, good government at all levels. So it means that, yeah, I'm talking to our federal MP in Garnet, who's in opposition, my local MLA, and Kyle, who's in opposition. But I'm also talking to Nate Glubish, who's locally, but also on the government side. Or I'm talking to Eleanor in downtown Edmonton. I was talking to Randy before him, but I was also sometimes talking to Blake Desjardins, who was the NDP MP in North Edmonton there, because he was really up on some of the social issues and the homelessness issues. So I'm having that good advocacy at different levels there. But it's also that I'm learning to bring things back to my resident there, because I'm learning things from my MP on it there, or from the local MP who's on the government side, to be able to bring things back to my residents as well. So it is that two-way street. I wish I could make all the decisions, but they haven't elected me king yet, and we haven't created the Republic of Strathconia for this whole independence thing. and we'll see how that goes. So,
Too soon, man, too soon.
well,
We're
if
still
they're gonna
early.
say if they're gonna force Alberta to separate from Canada, we're separating from Alberta, and we're gonna create the Republic of Strathcona. We're gonna build a wall. We're gonna make Edmonton pay for it. I'm gonna paint myself orange, and we're gonna call it Sherwood Parks because at this point it's good branding to be named after the community and have it in your name. So.
Oh, I'm expecting some very strongly worded emails after this interview airs.
This is where I can say I'm sarcastic on all of that. I am not in favor of any type of separation or independence, but we'll go from there.
Thank you for adding that. Before we turn to Strathcona County as a whole, I have one last area I want to talk about, and it's one that I'm trying to figure out. I get a sense across Canada that people are tuning out of municipal politics. They just don't have the time for it. They'd rather complain on Twitter or X, on Facebook about provincial, about federal politics. Municipal politics seems to be the sleeper of level of government. But, and I quote him all the time on the show, Scott Pierce, former president of FCM, would say it: you are the government of proximity. You are where the rubber literally and figuratively hits the road. In Strathcona County and in your ward, do you get a sense that people just don't care what's going on at City Hall and they're more reacting to issues rather than being proactive on issues? Or do you get a sense that if you go and talk to 100 people and say, this is the issue that's in front of a council right now, what's your opinion on it? I need to make a decision that's best for the community. Will they give your opinion, or will they go, what are you talking about, Robert?
I think if you go to people and you ask them, they have opinions. It's one of those crazy things that I think if you actually ask them, they'll tell you what they think. The problem that I think we've got at all levels of government is we're terrible of asking our residents what they think. We have never been able to figure out consultation with residents. It ends up being a checkbox more than an actual consultation. We're doing a lot of show and tell, but not a lot of actually asking people what they think. We need to do way better at it. We haven't gotten there yet. And while you're talking about social media where people are really good at griping, it's because that's where people know how to communicate still. And we aren't very good at communicating people. I know I use my local municipality as an example. I think we actually do really good outward. We shoot out information really well. It has no personality though. It is very much, we are going to be fixing the traffic circle on Broadmoor Boulevard for the next 3 weeks. It is going to cause this, and this issue. But not telling the story about why we're doing it, what's actually going to be happening, what's the reason why we're making some of these changes on it there. We do a terrible job of storytelling, and we do a terrible job of incorporating people into that decision making. So when we explain why we're doing something there, we say, now what do you think? What would you like to see on this? Is there something that we're missing on it? That we're terrible at being able to actually create relevance to our residents.
But
And
can I challenge you a little bit on that for a second?
sure,
Because
of course.
I come from a marketing communication background. I worked for a municipality. I know that those boring social media posts that we're saying we're upgrading this roundabout, we're upgrading this street, is the most boring thing that you can put out. But, and I say this respectfully to every municipal marketing and communication person out there right now, that's what you have to do.
Oh
Because
yeah.
unless you're going to go knock on every single person's door, there's going to be people who will complain that say at the end of the day they did not know. You can put it in utility bills, you can put it on the radio, you can put it on television, you can put it on social media. There will still be people that do not understand, and unless you literally bring it to them, hand it to them, and then they'll still say we didn't
And
know
then
the
read
full
it to
data.
them as well. I get it. So
Exactly. So how do we consult with our residents when they have other things that are more important in their life? But when it comes to when that moment when they're going to use that roundabout and they get detoured, they will react. And it's the reactionary part of this whole equation that municipalities have not been able to figure out. How do we stop getting people to react and be more proactive in what's going on in their community?
well, for me at least, first of all, you have to be okay sometimes to be, dealing with the reaction there. Sometimes you're going to be that pad that you're going to get the person who isn't, clued in on what's going on. And you're right. There's a lot of people that just they're worrying about, paying the bills on Friday. They're not worrying about, okay, what's going on in, the schoolyard when they're digging it up. They trust that we're making those decisions. And I think that's where at some point we have to say, all right, are they going to know everything? No. Do they need to know everything? Probably not. Are they sometimes going to be reacting to things? Sure. We have to then be okay with being able to react to it. we just have to be able to, at some point, be able to do a better job of being able to create relevance for folks to make sure that they see that there is relevance in what we're doing here. Because sometimes I think we're missing the mark on that. We're a little bit too prescriptive in how we explain things. We're not so good at being able to explain the why. And that's what I think a lot of people want is when they aren't understanding, when they are coming and reacting, well, let's give them the why at least then. Let's explain why we're fixing this. Say, all right, you're right. You're going to be having to, sometimes you have to show some empathy. You're right. You're going to be frustrated with this traffic circuit for the next few weeks while we're fixing it. The reason why we're fixing it is that we had 32 collisions at that circle last year. People are missing the yield sign. So we've got to make sure that the yield's better. We've got to get the entrance better in there so that we're not getting people getting collisions anymore. The collisions you're going to end up, and what's in it for me on that one? Well, if there's collisions on that intersection, first of all, it's slowing down the traffic when you're driving it. Secondly, globally, you're going to see more collisions, which means more insurance claims, which means your insurance rates are going to go up. Well, so if we can get less collisions, means less less of everything that way, means maybe your insurance rates don't go up quite as fast there. But it also means that you're driving on better infrastructure that's less likely to have you getting in that accident next time. So it's that being able to create relevancy when people are saying, oh, they just tearing up the damn road again. What the heck are they doing? Well, you got to explain the why. Explain why we're tearing up the road. Explain why we're doing this on it there. Most people, when you explain the why, they crawl back from that anger point of view. And yeah, the Facebook ones there, you're going to get the people that are angry on Facebook sometimes. Sometimes you just got to engage with them and say, all right, this is why we're fixing it.
Do
Do
you
you like
engage
it?
with them?
Pardon?
Do you
I do.
engage with them? You do?
I do sometimes. I know there's a lot of people saying, stay away from the Facebook comment sections. First of all, thick skin, so I can take it a little bit better than most. When somebody calls me an idiot, I allow for the possibility they might be right. I might be an idiot. So I may be a little bit more equipped to being able to deal with some of the social media commentary that way. But yeah, I'll engage. I'll explain why we're doing something. Half the time I'll get, well, that's stupid. And fair enough. They can believe that it's stupid and they don't like my explanation. Sometimes I go, that makes sense. And then I'll get a direct message afterwards and go, all right, that's something I haven't gotten from somebody before. So at least I'm able to step into it. And I come from a banking world. I come from, wanting to be a lawyer when I was a kid. I had jobs all the way through where people weren't going to like what I was doing on it there. But as long as you have a sense of humor about it and you can, absorb some of that pressure that you're getting from folks there, I can absorb it. I can usually give it back in a way that people are okay with listening to it. So it's worked for me so far.
Good for you. I want to turn to Strathcona County for a second, and I want to just start with this sort of rant that I need to get off my chest before we go into some of the questions. Now, this is a conversation between the councillor and myself. This is not a motion of council, not a direction of council, not a policy of council. This is his opinion and his opinion alone. Now, it may line up with what's going on at council, but at the end of the day, he needs a majority of council members around the council to vote in favor or against any motion, policy, or bylaw to implement it, to direct the CAO, to direct the administration to implement said policy, bylaw, or bylaw. Or yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. So with that being said, if you have any emails, please send them to me because I am asking the questions and this is his opinion and his opinion alone. Councillor, in your opinion, as of recording this in the middle of August 2025, what do you see as the biggest challenge or challenges facing, and I'm going to sort of split this into two parts if you don't mind, Sherwood Park, but also Strathcona County as a whole?
For me, I'm going to say right now it's affordability. I know in my first campaign I spoke about it. I've spoken in my second campaign. I'm going to speak about it in my third. Affordability. I spoke about growing up in Sherwood Park, but not being able to afford to live in Sherwood Park after graduating university. I spent a decade living outside of my home community because I couldn't afford to live here. So while I was working for the Royal Bank in Drayton Valley or Lloydminster, Hay River Northwest Territories or Macklin, Saskatchewan, and then finally Camrose, I always considered Sherwood Park home. I just couldn't afford to live there. So for me, it means finding smart affordability solutions. That's our most critical issue that I think we're dealing with a lot of folks. There's our best and our brightest can't afford to live in Sherwood Park. Our young folks are moving into the city. They're moving to, small town Alberta because that's where they can afford to live. The average rental price in Sherwood Park is 35% above the provincial average, and the provincial average is pretty high. Wages for young folks aren't keeping up with where they can easily afford to live in their communities, which means they're living in mom's basement longer than they should be, probably. It means they're not getting out on their own, it means they're not able to easily transition into adulthood. I grew up in Sherwood Park as well. And then the next one that you're talking about, I grew up in Sherwood Park that was considered to be a pretty conservative community. It had nicknames that weren't exactly complimentary. It spoke to a kind of monoculture that I didn't see outside of Sherwood Park when I was going to university at Simon Fraser in Vancouver. I saw different things that I saw in Sherwood Park. It left some of my friends when they left high school felt unwelcome in Sherwood Park. Led to them moving away right after high school, never having interest of coming back, just saying, I want to get a long way away from Sherwood Park because it wasn't welcoming to us there. So I think that's where we had a great community, but we were missing the mark as far as including people in our community. I wanted to see that improve. I still want to see that improve, and it's some issues that I think we still need to work on. Um, we've done really well on the economic development side in Strathcona County. We nail economic development. Um, Part of my job on council, as I've jokingly said, is to not F up what works. And for that is, it's our tax base. We've got a great tax base. My job is to not F up the tax base, to have that keep going up there and to keep it working so that we can pay for our services and everything there. So for me, we're different than in some there. It's managing growth. It's being, welcoming to folks there. And I say managing growth so that we can have people that can afford to live in our community. Our youngest aren't able to live here anymore. Now, in some ways, it's good. I won't say it's 100% bad. When you don't have 20-year-olds living in your community from 20 to 35, your petty crime is lower. Your crime rates are lower on some of that, just because, unfortunately, 20-year-old, 22-year-old guys don't always make the best decisions. We've learned that over time. So when you're getting them in their
I was a
35,
perfect 20 to 25-year-old. I will let you know that.
and I climbed on the roof of Madonna School in Mills Haven and threw rocks at cars when I was a kid. So, I mean, there's things that we did, but that we're probably not too proud of when we were younger. Probably best that we missed some of that, until they're 35. But at the same time, we're losing some of our people that we're never getting them back. And they're going to other places. Now, we're going to lose some anyways, because, I mean, we're Sherwood Park. We're not everything to everybody. But we should be as welcoming to people as we need to be, as we can be. And we weren't that. And we're having to work to get better at that. And I think that's something that we've got to find there. Um,
Can
yeah.
I just ask a question on that? Because
Sure.
Sherwood Park seems to be growing at an exponential rate right now. It seems
Yeah.
to be that, like, when I was just recently up there a few weeks ago, it seems like there's a lot of development going on the east end of the community, because you can't grow into Edmonton unless you and Amarjeet So here are going to have a very long conversation. I can imagine that is not going to end with Amarjeet going, you know what, you can have part of Edmonton.
Yeah, I
And
don't
if
see
you
that happening. Well, old Strathcona used to be part of Strathcona County back in the day. I don't think we're getting it back. Um, I mean, the reality is the only way that we can grow is either to be embracing densification in Sherwood Park, which I think we actually have to some degree, but it's also looking at, developing smartly. The
But
reality is,
the question is, how do you balance that growth with the there are people who probably grew up in, like yourself, who grew up in Sherwood Park in Strathcona County, who were like, you know what? This is the perfect size of our community. We do not want to see it grow. We want to see it stay the way it is. We want it to be that quote unquote bedroom community for Edmonton. People
yeah,
work downtown Edmonton, they drive out to Sherwood Park, and it's beautiful.
make
But
Sherwood Park 1984 again. I've heard it.
it,
We were the perfect size in 1984 when we were about 30,000 people. Any bigger than that, we're too big. Any smaller than that, we don't get the stores we want. I've heard it. The reality, though, is that we've built a good community that people want to live in. If people want to live somewhere, it doesn't make sense for me to say you can't live here. We're not going to build houses for you. Two things are going to happen. First of all, housing prices are just going to keep going up. And secondly, your taxes are going to go up faster, because the reality is you still have to service all of this old infrastructure. And if you're not getting a new tax base, it's going to have to come from the existing tax base. The other reality is that if we're not going to grow, somebody's going to grow for us. And that likely means annexation at some point. If we decide that Sherwood Park is never going to grow again, well, ask the town of Beverly outside of Edmonton how that worked for them. It's now the community of Beverly in Edmonton. There used to be a lot of municipalities around Edmonton, and Edmonton swallowed them up whole. The reason they swallowed them up whole is they couldn't grow anymore, and Edmonton needed to. Edmonton's going to need to grow over the next 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. The reality is that Sherwood Park exists right now. We've got to make sure that Sherwood Park exists in a way that it can be sustainable, serviceable.
are
And that
you
if
hopeful that that can happen? Are you hopeful that Sherwood Park and Strathcona County as a whole can stay Sherwood Park and Strathcona County, because
Yes,
Edmonton is growing at an exponential rate right now. And
it is.
like about 5 years ago, I would not have said that Beaumont and Edmonton were up close, like as much as Sherwood Park and Edmonton were, but they are. They're literally building to the edges of each other right now.
I
And a lot
think
of
at some
municipal,
point,
go ahead.
I think at some point we're going to be a little bit like one day. I suspect we're going to be like Toronto. The reality is that you're going to have that greater Edmonton area that's going to have a level of regional government. Sad that we lost some of our regionalism over the last few months here. But I think the reality is that at some point we're going to have to be able to work together with our partners there. Does that mean that we have to be Edmonton? No, we can be Strathcona County and Sherwood Park as part of an Edmonton region. But I think that's how we're going to be properly growing there. So yeah, when you're talking to people from Holland and you're trying to explain it, yeah, I'm going to say I'm from the Edmonton region. We're from Edmonton. But at the same time, Sherwood Park is still going to be its own thing inside of a larger region. And I think that's how we can maintain our autonomy in there, because I think Sherwood Park is different than Edmonton. I think that should be on our sign at some point. Welcome to Sherwood Park. We're not Edmonton. But the reality is that I think that we can maintain ourselves there. You go into New York City. It's New York City, but there's Brooklyn, there's Queens, there's all these other communities that are real, fully formed communities within that greater New York area. I think Sherwood Park could be part of one of those great communities inside of that larger Edmonton area. And that's likely what we're going to end up doing if we do this right over the years. Which means that, yes, one day we're probably going to have a regional policing discussion where we're going to have to work with our neighbors for policing. Because the reality is the lines on the map don't really matter too much to residents. The services they are, the community that they're in matters, but the lines don't. So if it means that we're going to have a regional police service one day, sure, that makes sense. Regional transit to be able to get around the community, the region properly, yeah, that makes sense. Coordinating our roads and everything that way makes sense. But we can still maintain our autonomy within the things that make sense, though. So whether we have regional recreation where we decide we're going to have, Edmonton people be able to use the Strathcona County rec facilities, we can work out the details and things like that, where we can work together on it there. I mean, North Edmonton comes to our Costco already. We can work together on things that way without having to be one government. We can maintain our autonomy within that, especially as Strathcona County likely grows to that 150,000, 200,000 people over the next 50 years. I mean, in my lifetime, we're probably going to hit 200,000 people in Strathcona County. I think that we're still going to be Strathcona County when I take my last breath. I don't see us being Edmonton in there. I can see us being in a larger Edmonton region, but I still think Strathcona County and Sherwood Park is going to be part of that as a separate entity legally at the very least.
I did not want to ask this question, but I'm going to have to because it's been popping up in my head this entire conversation that we've had. Does Strathcona County have an identity problem right now? Because I have met many people from Sherwood Park, and when I meet them, they never say they're from Strathcona County. They always say they're from Sherwood Park. And you talk about Beverly, but you talk to someone in Beverly, they'll say they're from Edmonton. You talk to someone in I don't know any other community because that's the only one that
Millwoods.
Millwoods, they will say they're from Edmonton.
Yep.
But I get a sense that in Sherwood Park, people still cling to the idea that they are still a separate entity from Strathcona County. But
Mm-hmm.
you represent them on Strathcona County, and they are a weirdly not a town, not a village, not a city, but they are Sherwood Park, Strathcona County.
I've jokingly said Sherwood Park is a subdivision that got out of hand. We are not a real place. We are Narnia. I've jokingly said it because we're not incorporated in any way. I mean, and in a lot of ways, Sherwood Park is a subdivision that got out of hand. I mean, we started to build houses for the refinery workers just outside of the Sherwood Park boundary. And one subdivision became two, became five, become now 19. And so we've got all these cool subdivisions that have clumped together, which means we're having to reverse engineering a town center, but that's a different issue with our center of the park project that we're doing there. Do we have our own identity? Probably. Sherwood Park is its own thing in a lot of ways, but that doesn't mean that we're not also Strathcona County. That's why when you come into each of our hamlet signs, it says "Welcome to Sherwood Park," but the Strathcona County is the large sign because you could be both. Strathcona County, we're urban, we're rural. I've jokingly said we're a little bit like at rural municipalities of Alberta and AB munis. We're the Osmond family. We're little country. We're little rock and roll. I get that. We're not easily defined as either of them being a specialized municipality because am I urban? Me? Yeah, I'm as urban as they come. I live in a 6-story apartment with great internet in a county. And so when I was doing the RMA rep for FCM, and I'm having to talk about poor internet coverage. And I'm going, first of all, you don't want me taking the test for us to show where internet is because I'm going to screw up the next 100 tests for us because my internet's fantastic. But I know if I go 5 miles into Corianne Hartwick's ward just outside of Sherwood Park, they might as well have a tin can and a string for their internet because they do not have good quality internet just outside of it. You can see the big buildings in Edmonton and you got terrible internet. So we've got those rural issues in my community. In my neighborhood, maybe not. My neighborhood might be really, really good. But that's like anywhere. If you're in any rural community, there's going to have hamlets that have got good internet and bad internet, good services and bad services. What we're trying to do is hit a standard there for our community there that can be a little bit larger. Does my community understand that sometimes there's more than just Sherwood Park? Not always, but we then have to let them know that, yeah, we're Sherwood Park, but we're also a Drawson. We're also Josephburg. We're also Collingwood Cove. We're also Hastings Lake. We're also all these little hamlets around there that are a little bit smaller that maybe don't have as many services as Sherwood Park has, but we've got to offer the services for everybody. So yeah, we're going to run the bookmobile out to the Brookville Hall once a week there so people out there can easily access a library because we aren't going to build another library on Brookville at this point, but we're going to make sure that they've got good quality internet at the community center. We're going to have the bookmobile. It's going to have good internet while it's there, and it's going to be able to get the books from the library without them having to necessarily always drive in, especially for seniors and things they can't. So we have to explain to people sometimes regularly that yes, we're Sherwood Park, but we're also Ardross, and we're also all these other areas. We're also the farmland. We're also the industrial heartland, which is why I jokingly say we're special. And there's a reason why we're a full-time council. It's because I can say that in full sentences rather than in a part-time council. I've only got 15 minutes before I've got to get back to work. So
I want to flip the original question on its head for a second before I turn to the last subject, and that's my favorite one is tourism. Actually, two other subjects, but my last one is tourism. We've talked about a lot of the challenges. You talk about growth, you talk about affordability, you talk about the identity, you talk about sort of engagement of residents and communication with residents. What's the thing that you guys do right? What is the thing that Strathcona County prides itself on that says, you know what, we have these challenges, but we have X going for us? What's the X factor that makes Strathcona County and in sense Sherwood Park the great place that you love?
I would say we offer the best services in the region at the most reasonable price. And I'd say that full confidence. I think our roads are better. I think our sidewalks are better. I think our transit is better. I think our recreation is better. I think we've got great policing from the RCMP. I think our ambulances having 3 men on a bus with the ambulance compared to everywhere else that only has two gives you a better level of service. I think we offer a better level of service in Strathcona County and Sherwood Park than we do in the rest of the region. And I think we do that for a lower price, thanks largely to our tax base, that we can do it at a lower tax. I mean, our property tax for the same value house in Sherwood Park is half of what it is in St. Albert. Why? Because we have a tax base, but we also offer better services. I have friends in Edmonton that the roads look like they're falling apart in some places, and especially in the residential areas, they're really struggling. Well, they're struggling because they don't have a tax base like we do, and we don't. We've lived to a standard that we live to. So when we're talking about our roads getting rehabbed, we have them on a schedule and we're constantly reviewing them to making sure that if the road is starting to break down, we're fixing it before we need to do a full rebuild, but we're fixing it. And so our roads end up being in better shape. I think we're doing things pretty well on that. I would argue we're probably doing it better than most, if not better than everybody. So I would say I get to brag a little bit on this. Say if we're on the pyramid of municipalities, we're at the tip of the top here. I mean, I'd say Alberta is a pretty darn good place to live as a province, and I'd say Strathcona County is about as good of a place you can live in Alberta than you can in Canada. So I mean, if I say Canada is the best country, Alberta is the best province, Strathcona County is the best municipality within the best province within the best country. Where can you be better? And yeah, there's some places that may have the mountains. We don't get the mountains. But instead, we get, a really cool rec facility that you don't get sometimes in some of those smaller communities.
True that.
And we do
And
that without having some of the social issues that you're getting in the big cities. Because, I mean, the reality is a lot of our homeless population we don't see. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. But at the same time, we don't see a lot of the issues you see in the big cities, but we get a lot of the benefits from being near it and having a lot of our services ourselves. So,
and I say
yeah.
this respectfully a little bit on that last statement you just said. While you may not see it now, it's coming. And I say
Oh, it
that because
is. And that's
I see the smaller communities who are dealing with the backlash from Edmonton's. I don't want to say lack of services that they provide. It's just they're inundated by it. So a lot of these people, a lot of homeless people are leaving Edmonton and going to different communities to see if they can find services that can
When
help them.
when I was the branch manager for the Royal Bank in Camrose, I also ended up taking over the Wetaskiwin branch as well, and seeing Wetaskiwin, how many homeless people you could see there. I was in Red Deer for Alberta Municipalities conference there last year. I had no idea that there was a homeless population like that in Red Deer that I'd never seen before. There were people camping beside the Walmart. That was never something that was being my picture. And in Sherwood Park, you're right, we are starting to see it. We never used to have panhandlers in Sherwood Park. We never had them. The other day I saw somebody panhandling off the side of the road, something that we never saw before. We've got to be prepared for it there, and that's where I think we've got to modernize the community to be smarter than the problem again. Because I think we've been really good about we're really good at identifying that there is a problem. We're terrible at saying, okay, let's be smarter than fixing it. And
Execution's always the hardest part, right?
execution's always the hardest part, and it's one of those ones where I've joking. I've got all these little sayings for people there that I mean, yeah, it could be someone else's problem today, but it's going to be our problem tomorrow. And if we aren't willing to at least come to the realization that there is a problem, it's going to be in our doorstep tomorrow. And that's again why I've been involved with FCM there, where we're dealing with a lot of the chronic homelessness. While we're dealing with that, and while we also need to have that, new municipal framework for funding ourselves, because the reality is that we're not able to fund ourselves properly to pay for this, especially when we've got different levels of government pushing down a lot of the things on extra services for us to do without the funding to pass it along. I mean, it's one of those ones where you download on us services, but you don't download funding for us there, and you don't give us options to fund it. But then you also get mad at us when we raise our property taxes to try and deal with some of the things you give to us. It's one of those joking catch-22s that we don't have a good answer for. But that's because you aren't giving us the tools to fix the problem or to even address the problem. And we're barely able to even, identify the problem. And there's where we're having the challenges. So
I feel
it's a
like if Carol
fun problem.
Saab and Rebecca Bly were listening to this right now, they'd be clapping and be like, "Good job, Robert. Good job. Good job.
I
Good
hit
job
my
for
marks.
good
Well,
job for hitting your
I'm
mark."
up for committees again. I got to get reappointed. So if I don't get reappointed, I'm at least going to have my point to be able to, get on my soapbox because
And
I've been
it's
on my
nice,
soapbox
nice
for.
and easy next year. You're just down the road from where you are right now. It's in
That's
Edmonton,
right.
beautiful
It's
downtown Edmonton.
I'm really happy to be in Edmonton for FCM next year. It'll be a great spot to have it. I'm hoping that we can actually show off more than just Edmonton if we can get some tourists out into the area. I mean, we've got, for folks that don't know, Elk Island Park just outside of Edmonton, 20 minutes. Dark Sky Preserve. If you want to see the Northern Lights, it's the best place to see the Northern Lights. We had the meteor shower last night. It's the best place in the region to see the meteor shower because you've got a dark sky preserve. It's absolutely amazing. And it's 20 minutes away. And might see a bison there. And unlike my MP who took a picture right beside it, we have to teach them the rule of thumb. And that is, again, put your thumb out there. And if you can't cover the entire bison, you're too close to the bison. That works for
Okay.
any wild animal, by the way. People need to learn the rule of thumb. There's a reason why it's called that way. If you're too close to the animal with your thumb out at your arm's length, you're too close to the animal. Get away.
Okay, you mentioned some tourism spots, so we're going to bypass that because I'm very cautious of time here, and I have one last area I need to talk about, and that is this October 20th. There is an important election day here in the province of Alberta. Municipalities across this province are going to be heading to the polls, and you have announced that you are running for re-election for a third term for
I
Ward
am.
1 in Strathcona County. What was the decision based on putting your name for it for a third term?
For me, it was a challenge because I actually came from this point where I view at some point you almost need to have term limits because I think if you're there too long, you're not bringing new ideas forward. I got talked into running one more term here on council because at the same time there, I think that it's actually healthy to have new people come in there. That being said, I think I bring some things to the table that I think we need to get there. So I've had the privilege of serving for the last 8 years there, and we've gotten some things moving forward, especially on inclusion, on being able to get some affordable projects done moving forward. I want to see some of those through. So what was the reason why I want to run again? Is that I want to see us do better. It's one of those ones that's at good to great level there. I think we're good. I think we're really good in Strathcona County. Do I think we can be better? Always. And I'd like to see us get to some of that better there. And I've got the energy to do it still. The one thing that we
And
used to
your
have
family's behind you because the role of a counselor is very time consuming, and that means you have to balance that work life and personal life. I'm assuming you wouldn't be doing this without your wife's support, so I'm
I would
assuming.
not, she was one of the people that encouraged me to do it one more time. Um, I was not married when I got elected in 2017. I was not married when I got reelected in 2021. I actually met my now wife. I've never been married before, so this is the first time. I got married and met my wife during COVID, during lockdowns. We were one of those folks there that were doing our first dates on Zoom this way, and actually did our first actual date walking my dog around the lake in Sherwood Park, because that's all you were allowed to because the restaurants weren't open. So she's one of those ones that knew that I was a politician going in. And I'm willing to say I'm a politician. I didn't say that when I started. I'm now a politician. I admit it. I speak for a living. I've yet to, I don't drive the grader. So I must be the one who has to tell them, how much they pay for their budget. So for me, it was really just, talking to my family, talking to my friends. Should I do this again? My parents, yes, I should do it again. My wife, I think you've got more in you. Um, do I want to run for a higher role? No, actually, I like my mayor. I think my mayor's doing a good job. I'm not going to run against my mayor if I think he's doing a good job. So we've got a good mayor, and I think we've got a good council. We've actually got a really highly functioning council with different point of views. I mean, we've got two of them that ran for NDP MLA for nominations, and Mr. Tanita and Ms. Burkhofer, that both were from the NDP side. I've got one councillor who was Green Party back in the 80s, who used to work with fight Greenpeace with Greenpeace there against the French military, and Glenn Lawrence. He's the most interesting man in the world. Dirty old hippie. At some point, you've got to talk to him. He doesn't do social media. He doesn't do internet. Cool guy, though. But we've also got, a former provincial person. I used to be involved with progressive conservatives. I lean myself more conservative on a lot of things there, socially progressive, but fiscally conservative. We've got a mayor who ran federally NDP or federal liberal in 2015. We've got a real big, wide swath of political views there, from Greens and Greenpeace from the 80s to NDP nowadays provincially, to a federal liberal, to a provincial progressive conservative, to I know a couple of them that are involved with the UCP still today. We've got this wide swath, but we get along really well. And while we disagree on issues, always, we get along really well, and we aren't disagreeable. We go for, barbecues together. We'll joke about disagreeing on everything there, and I'll call, Glenn a dirty old hippie. I will say my socialist friend Bill. I'll say my flat earth friend Aaron. We've got all this in there, and we work together because most of our issues that we're dealing municipally aren't partisan issues. I've yet to meet a conservative grass that needs to be mowed, or a conservative pothole, or a liberal pothole. There isn't one. What we're dealing is practical issues. So it doesn't matter what our ideology is. We just work well together, and it seems to work well that way. So it's fun.
Well, I wish you all
And
the
it's still
best.
fun. I like my job 3 out of 4 days still. That's part of it. If it gets down to 2 out of 3 days, we got a problem. But I like it 3 out of 4 days still. Every fourth day, you want to run somebody through with a flagpole. But that's usually just because things move so slow sometimes in government.
Please note that he's being sarcastic again. He's
I will
not
not
wanting.
literally be running anybody through with a flagpole. First of all, they're too heavy. And secondly, it is illegal. And thirdly, I'm not actually going to hurt anybody. I just like to talk.
I should mention, just in case people are watching this, if you are running against Robert and you want to come on and talk about your campaign, please reach out to us. We want to give equal opportunity time to have everyone on the show, but we have 343 municipalities that we're covering this election cycle, and we have a lot of time. We have a very limited time that we can do this. So if you want to come on the show and talk, you have to reach out to us, and the links will be in the show notes below. My final question for you before I let you go, because we are literally nearing the hour mark of this conversation, which was supposed to be a half hour to 40-minute conversation, turns into an hour. I love it. What, and this is the big $1 million question, in your opinion, what makes Strathcona County such a unique place to live, to work, and to raise a family?
We're still a small town in a lot of ways. I think that makes it's different. I know my neighbors. I'm really good about knowing my neighbors. We've got that small town feeling still, which a lot of people still really want. At the same time, we've got the big city amenities. We've got the large rec centers. We've got a Costco. We've got really good roads. We've got ways to get into the city. If you're into, Edmonton sports teams, you can get to the Edmonton downtown core in 20 minutes. So we've got that capability of being that bedroom community, but at the same time, we've got our own identity. We've got cool businesses. We've got cool little things here all over the place. We've got community leagues now sprouting up in Sherwood Heights and things like that in Gilmore Park, Incher Park, which we never used to have. Um, I always said in a lot of ways, the world needs more bowling. And I use that bowling as that holding point there because it gets people off of these devices. These devices, in a lot of ways, are the enemy of everything of building community because you don't meet people, you don't talk to people without being able to talk to the person in front of you. And I use bowling as that example because it's that one thing that everybody does, that everybody can do in front of people. You talk while you're doing it. It's like curling and bowling and all those things that you can do while you can get to see people. And so what makes Sherwood Park great, I'm Strathcona County great, is that we've got all of these really cool things, but we've got cool community as well. And I mean, we've got big houses, little houses, we've got apartment buildings, we've got shopping, we've got everything that you'd want in that community for like the structure, but we've got really cool folks. I mean, we've got people that have been here for 60, 70 years now in Sherwood Park because it only started in the 1950s, but we're still a really young community in a lot of ways. We've got young families that are moving here. We've got, a lot of things just going for us. And not the least of which is that you've got jobs, you've got opportunity. You're not stuck not being able to do things there because we've got all these things that are available to us. And you can do all of that in an affordable house for the most part. I'd like to make it more affordable for some folks to have different options, but at the same time, we've got all that and we're safe. I mean, it's a safe community. I mean, I wrote down notes beforehand to make sure that I, hit a couple of my points here. But one of them was that, I mean, we're a community that people can feel that they can live safely and happy. We're one of those, there's a reason why our goal is to be our most livable community. I think it's one of those ones, it's one of those goals without having, set numbers, but it's a good thing to say you want to be. You want to be somewhere where people are happy to live, and you can be happy to live here. That's why.
On the Strathcona website, I know I said that was going to be my last question, but if you haven't learned by now by watching the show 681 times, I will let you know that I will always ask one last question, then I'll have two other follow-up questions. On the Strathcona County website, there's a line that I used on the beginning of this interview, at the beginning of the episode, where I introduce you as the guest, and it says Strathcona County uses that energy to power a new tomorrow. What does that mean in your sense for looking at what you've done over the last 8 years and what Strathcona can be for a new tomorrow?
For me, it's about embracing the future. I think it's about modernizing. It's about not stopping what makes us special and what we've already been doing. It means being prepared for where people are going to be in the years ahead. So it means, making sure our transportation system is, well maintained, but it also means that it's future proofed and that it is resilient and that it is all these things. Because what you want to do in building community is build it for today's residents, but also making sure that our community is still there and still thriving into the future. And that means making sure that we're, building for the future. Now, does that mean we necessarily have to be full on freakonomics and all of that? No. But it means that we've at least listened to what they're doing. And so we can see that there are some trends coming out there. So if it means that, we're building for the future. And I use the parking lots as the one there that maybe one day we aren't building parking lots anymore. And that's because people don't own cars the same way anymore. So we're making sure that we're prepared for what's the change that's going to happen there. So when it does start to change, that we're there and we're ready, rather than having to react 5 years too late. And when that happens, it means you're going to be that community that people want to live in. We're going to be the, Carmel and not, the Detroit. We're going to be the Strathcona County and not, XYZ, community that isn't sustainable anymore.
I
And
was hoping you would pick on another municipality in Alberta right there. I was
I
like,
will
is he
if you'd
going to
like.
do it? Is he going to do it?
I'm going to, and it's going to be one that doesn't exist anymore. It's going to be Grand Cache. I mean, Grand Cache was not prepared for the changes they saw.
Yeah.
You look at that, and I mean, when things changed, they weren't prepared, and it ended up having to roll into the county. And I look at some of the communities in our region there, they're going to have a tough time. And I'll say one that I love the community. Gibbons is in a tough way. They've got huge amounts of debt. They aren't seeing a lot of new growth. They've got housing development, but they don't have a lot of industry. That's a tough one. And it's tough to be in a community like that. And I feel for the municipal leaders that are there to try and have to figure it out, how to either become sustainable or to be that last council that has to turn in the keys to the province because you don't want to be that one. And I could see that. It'd make me sick if I was in a community that wasn't sustainable anymore. And if we're not sustainable, trying to find a way to become sustainable. And so I hope I never become a Gibbons or a Grand Cache. But at the same time, trust that the people in Gibbons are going to find the people that hopefully can find their way out of this. Or if you're going to end up being like a Grand Cache there, then you can find a way to get through to the other side. Because that's the reality we live in. That, I mean, again, the lines on the map don't matter. It's the services that you get, and it's the community you live in. And whether you're called the town of Grand Cache or not, you're still Grand Cache. You just aren't a town anymore. I mean, Fort McMurray doesn't become any less Fort McMurray because it's a hamlet within Wood Buffalo. It's still Fort McMurray. It's just within Wood Buffalo. Sherwood Park is still Sherwood Park within Strathcona County. I would never want to become the city of Sherwood Park. I like being the hamlet of Sherwood Park. I hope we can continue being that, and I hope that everybody can continue being the way they are. But it's we're in a good spot here compared to a lot. That's all.
You certainly are. Robert, I want to thank you. Rob, Councillor, thank you so much for sitting down with me. This has been an honest to goodness pleasure to chat with you about your campaign, your office, your community. It is a great first conversation. I look forward to many more, whether it be at Alberta Municipalities, RMA, or even FCM. I look forward to those conversations.
Well, with luck in October, I'll be at all of those again. So.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Cross Border Interviews. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of municipal politics in Strathcona County. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms or by visiting us on YouTube at Cross Border Network to never miss an upcoming episode. Your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. If you want to learn more about our guest today or the community that they represent, be sure to subscribe to the show and head over to our website at crossborderinterviews.ca. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Cross Border Interviews shortly. Till then, everyone.